mouth double as a fever. The girls.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose.
Peace to the planet. What's good, my people? What's happening? Impromptu, I know. Impromptu. But I want to go ahead, first of all, apologize for not being able to go live Sunday. I know we missed that Sunday session of Father Abraham, so charges to the head, not to the heart. I was on travel. But today is that day. And I just popped in my head today to talk about this information. So, but of course, first things first, I pop, make move with all the mummies. Back of the club, sipping more wet is where you find me. Do some proper protocol. Recognize the people. Y'all in here early too. Bruce Lee, bro, always tapping in. Shouts out to Bruce Lee. Chris G, master student, always in the building. Master students checking in. Shouts out to Crumb TV, all the master students over there. Chris always in the building. True King tapping in. Ashe in the peace. Las Familia. Unites. Peace and light, fam. Peace and light, fam. Of course, the Mother Queen is in the building. The Empress. The M.O.I. Empress is in the building. Queen of Force and Healing Ministries. Ashe to the sister. You're right, class is in session. Get your pen and your paper. It's gonna be some interesting history. I'm excited about it. I do. Grand Rising, peace and light. And of course, we got the L's and the bays, the wheels and the ways. Islam. Peace and light. That's everybody. Let's hop into it. Let's get right into it. Let's not tarry no longer. It's so much information, man. So much information. let's see. And what's crazy is I'm operating on like 3 screens right now, so I'm serious today. Ethnic cleansing. Let's just jump right into it. Ethnic cleansing. I think most of us may know about it as hold on. Let me pull up another relevant. There we go. Ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing. This is ethnic cleansing. Right here. Trail of Tears. Ethnic cleansing. So that's the word you write down right now. Write down ethnic cleansing. That's the first word of the day. There's also another word which you write down. But well, let's first understand what we're talking about. Ethnic cleansing. Definition. Rendering an area ethnically homogeneous by using force or intimidation to remove from a given area persons of another ethnic or religious group, which is contrary to international law, Using force to remove. Y'all are reading this. Homogeneous. That means collectively. Using a collective, rendering an area ethnically altogether by using force or intimidation to remove from a given area persons of another ethnic or religious group. So now you start to see where I'm going with this. But we have to learn why. Where? Who? Seriously. Ethnic cleansing. Peace and light, brother. Hey, I ain't getting in the gym with you, bro. I need to hop in the gym, man. Let me get in the gym. Bro, got me motivated. Let me go to the gym, man. Peace and light, bro. That's exactly what it is. In fact, a lot of people say that the movie Avatar war about the indigenous people here. So you can really compare the onset of Europeans coming to North America and what it looked like, the vast vegetation, the tall trees, like in the movie Avatar. And another group coming in and exterminating, taking over, getting all the resources. Ethnic cleansing. There's another word I want you guys to also look up. See, this is the beauty of having multiple screens up at a time. See how I can just go between information? I love it. All right. It's little things for me, guys. There's another word. The second word is eugenics. Eugenics. Eugenics, the study of how the arranging reproduction within a human population to increase occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable. So remember, the idea is behind making a more desirable race. We just went through, I showed you what ethnic cleansing was. This is all science, well, pseudoscience, but it's science. All around town, around the end of the 1800s through the 1920s, 40s, 50s, Tuskegee Project, all of it. Watch it. So eugenics, again, is the study of how to arrange reproduction within the human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable, developed largely by Sir Francis Galton as a method of improving the human race. Eugenics was increasingly discredited as unscientific and racially biased during the 20th century, especially after the adaptation of its doctrine by the Nazis in order to justify their treatment of Jews, disabled people, and other minority groups. So a couple things are happening in this paragraph if you follow history. They're saying that eugenics it gained unpopularity once the Nazis were using it to eradicate Jews in Germany. That's when it became unpopular. That's when it became unpopular. Not before then, though. Let me show you something. Watch this. This is Eugene Fisher. Write down Eugene Fisher. And the reason I'm giving you Eugene Fisher, because remember, right here, it was developed, and we were going to talk about Francis Galton. It's a couple names I want you to write down. So you can write down Francis Galton as well, because I'm going to take you from Francis Galton all the way back to Darwinism. And Lothrop Stoddard is another one. And then I'm going to take you up to Niagara Falls, New York, to show you a facility that was ran up there that gave birth to the idea of eugenics. But keep in mind, the entire time we're talking about the Trail of Tears just happened, trying to eradicate a group of people. And it's been going on since the Western expansion of Europe under what was called the Doctrine of Discovery, or Indica Terra Cadena, Dem Versi. The Magna Carta also played a part in a lot of that stuff. What else? The Ponce defects. All these doctrines, mass eradication of a certain group of people, eradicating people. I mean, like whole genome pools gone. But the whole time, the Europeans are focused on how to increase their numbers. So you had something called positive eugenics, which encouraged Europeans in America to have more babies for population control. That's the reason race mixing was so illegal, due to the fact that it would genetically annihilate their race. I'm gonna show you. So right now, Francis Galton. Write down Eugene Fisher. Eugene Fisher. Let's read about Mr. Fisher right quick. Eugene Fisher was a German professor of medicine, anthropology, eugenics, and a member of the Nazi Party. He served as director of Kissinger Weinhelm Institution of Anthropology, Human Heredity, and Eugenics. That's a whole course. That's a whole situation. And out of the anthropology part, you get people like, let me show you. There you go. Write down Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. Because we're talking about the transition from the 1800s going into the 19th century, dealing with anthropology, dealing with science. I can show you people like Franz Boas, the whole out of Africa theory. 1920s, you got Dr. Leakey, who discovered Xanthropus. Dr. Mendel's law come into effect of recessive and dominant. The origin of species, 1800s, Charles Darwin. But write down Friedrich Blumenbacher. Let's take a look at Johann Blumenbacher. You're gonna notice that these are a lot of Germans. So a lot of German science influence American science and vice versa. Even to the point where people like Margaret Sanger was going over to conferences in Switzerland with the same German party, trying to understand how to eradicate, get rid of, annihilate certain genopools. Like, this is some mad scientist shit. Mad science shit that they're pulling off. Change my background. So, Johann Friedrich Blumenbacher was a German physician, naturalist, physiologist, and anthropologist. He is considered to be the main founder of zoology and anthropology as comparative scientific discipline. Now, zoology, and from zoology, you get something called taxonomy. Taxonomy. And taxonomy is the classification of certain species, mammals, amphibians, breaking it down even farther than that. It's called taxonomy. Now, the father of taxonomy is another gentleman. His name is Carl Linnaeus. Hold on. Carl Linnaeus. I'm gonna show you Carl Linnaeus. Hold on. I'm working multiple screens, man. It's exciting though. This is Carl Linnaeus. Carl Linnaeus. Watch this. See how they all got the same discipline? Watch this. Carl Linnaeus, also known after, I don't even know what that word is. Let's see. Oh, nobility. Okay. Ennoblement. He was a noble. He was knighted. As Carl von Linné was a Swedish biologist and physician who formalized bionomenclature, a modern system naming organisms. He is the father of modern taxonomy. I just told you. He is also, many of his writings were in Latin. His name rendered as in Latin as Carolus Linnaeus after 1761 ennoblement Carolus Luni. It gives his whole history. But the reason I show you Carl Linnaeus is because I wanted to show you this guy right here. Samuel Morton. Write down Samuel Morton. We ain't even got the Margaret Sanger yet. We haven't even got to Margaret Sanger yet. Deshaun, listen to me, bro. By the time we get to Margaret Sanger, you're going to have an understanding of why Margaret Sanger was doing what Margaret Sanger was doing. Margaret Sanger was financed. He was financed by what was called the American Birth Control League. The American Birth Control League financed Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger had like a not even a newspaper. She was like a little, and this time would be like a little vlog site, a little bullshit vlog site, little newspaper articles she was writing. I can show you how Margaret Sanger was directly tied to the last group of Moors out of Indianapolis, but she labeled them to be undesirables, vagabonds. And see, at that time, at the end of the 1800s, going to the 1900s, you still had laws on the books, like the fugitive slave laws on the books still. Vagrancy laws were on the books still. So a lot of the so-called vagabonds that they call are undesirables. Margaret Sanger got a lot of steam behind her work because of the situation. But Margaret Sanger was financed by a group of men. And I'm showing you some of the individuals now that you can trace information back to. Samuel Martin is one of them. Blumenbacher is one of them. I'm going to show you more. And then we'll get to Margaret Sanger in a minute. Samuel Morton. Samuel Morton was an American physician. You're going to see America, Swedish, and German. Especially Sweden and Germany, because Germany was trying to help to restore the perfect Aryan race. You had the Aryans or the Aryans. Okay. Oh, let's get into all that, man. You had the Aryans, you had the Alpines, and the Nordics. The Aryans, the Alpines, and the Nordics were the three supreme so-called European races. Alpines, Nordics, and I can show you. The Alpines, the Nordics were at the top two, and the Aryans. So you're always going to see Germany and Switzerland involved. America got involved, but America was doing it the worst. I can show you how Germany learned from America. I'm going to show you that Margaret Sanger was attending conferences in Switzerland. Let's continue. Samuel George Morton was an American physician, natural scientist. You're always going to see naturalists, natural scientists, just pseudoscience, pretty much, and writer. As one of his early figures on scientific racism. Scientific racism. Did y'all know that it was a science? So before I show you this scientific racism, remember, Moors. The lessons in the Moorish Science Temple says what? According to science, black means death. Nobody ever asked which science. Scientific racism. Let's deal with it. Scientific racism. Look at what it covers. Societies. Color terminology. Identifying human race in terms of their skin color. At least one among several physiological characteristics has been common since antiquity. Such divisions appears in rabbinical literature and early modern scholarship, usually dividing humankind in 4 categories. Let's see what categories. Identifying human races in terms of skin color. At least one among several physiological characteristics has been common since antiquity. Such division appears in rabbinical literature and early modern scholarship, usually dividing humankind into 4 categories with color-based labels: red, yellow, black, white, sometimes brown. This is called colorism. It's a science. It was long recognized that the number of categories and the arbitrary to subjective categories are arbitrary and subjective. The different ethnic groups were placed in different categories at different points in time. This person right here, Francisco Veneer, a French traveler, nobody important. He doubted the validity using skin color as racial characteristics, and Charles Darwin, write down Charles Darwin, was an English naturalist. You're going to keep saying they were naturalists. Pseudoscience, bullshit, you're shooting the shit. An English naturalist, geologist, biologist, widely known for contributions in evolutionary biology. His proposition that all species of life descended from a common ancestor is now generally accepted and considered fundamental, whatever the fuck. It's just accepted. It's not even proved. It's a theory. It's called the theory of revolution. The theory of evolution. The theory of evolution. The theory of gravity. It's the theories put forth by white pseudoscientists. Charles Darwin. Another name just popped in my head too. Hold on. Here we go. The name just popped in my head, man. That was crazy. So let's finish this first. I'm excited. Charles Darwin. Y'all got Charles Darwin written down. A little bit of history. Antiquity to 1600s. Categorization in racial groups by preference of skin color is a common classically antiquity. For example, it is founded, and whatever the fuck that word is, a Greek treason dated in 300 BC. The transmission of color terminology for race from antiquity to early anthropology in the 17th century Europe took place via rabbinical literature. So they're telling you where it came from. The idea of classifications of race by skin color came out of the Torah. It says rabbinical literature. Rabbinical literature can be the Torah. It could be what's called the Sapaharasa literature, the Book of the Upright Ones, the Book of the Wisdom. It could be let's see, you get the Torah. I forgot the other word of it. Not Pentateuch, but out of rabbinical literature, the idea of race. Hold on. It says, in the broadest sense, the entire spectrum of rabbinical writings throughout Jewish history. However, the term often refers to specifically the literature from the Talmud, the Talmudic era, and opposed to medieval modern rabbinical writing, thus correspondent. So basically, the idea of Ham and Sham and the race based on skin color. Let's go back up. Color terminology for race. Which falls under what's called scientific racism. So according to science, black means death. Nobody ever asked which science. I'm gonna show you the science. And we even got to social science here. Scientific racism. So just based on science, which is pseudoscience. So we got Samuel Morton. And see how it backs up what we just saw? As one of the early figures in scientific racism, he argued against monogamous, or sometimes monogynous, is a theory of human race which was posits common descent for all human races. So he was really against Charles Darwin's theory. Charles Darwin said we all come from one species. He don't believe that. This is Samuel Morton. The single creation story of the Bible, instead of supporting polygenism, a theory of multiple race creations. So he thought that there were multiple creations when it came to race. But he's a key figure, though. Write him down. He was a prolific writer of books of various subjects from 1823 to 1851. He wrote the Geological Observation in 1828, the Synopsis of Organic Remains of Contextualizing Group of the United States, and Illustrations of Preliminary Consumptions of 1834. His first medical essay on the use of the cornea and intermittent fever was published in Philadelphia Journal of Medical and Physical Science. His early career. This is interesting, though. It says he's born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Morton was raised as a Quaker. These are the Quakers. The Quakers are the ones that came over on the third voyage. You call them pilgrims. These are not pilgrims. They're Quakers on a pilgrimage. You also had the Puritans, the Brownings, and the Quakers were the three religious fascist groups over here, first in the colonies. So there's that. Let's see some more interesting stuff real quick. Samuel Morton is often thought of as the originator of American school ethnology, a school of thought in antebellum America science that claimed the difference between humans was of one species rather than variety. And it is seen by some as an original origin in scientific racism. Morton claimed that the Bible supported polygynous. In working in the biblical framework, his theory stated that each race had been created separately and each was given specific and irrevocable characteristics. After inspection, 3 mummies from ancient Egypt catacombs, Morton concluded that Caucasians and Negroes were already distant 3,000 years ago, since the Bible indicated that Noah's Ark had washed up to Mount Ararat. Morton claims that Noah's sons could not possibly account for every race on earth. So he actually taught against it. He said that Ham, Shem, and Japheth, there's no way that they could be responsible for every race on the planet. Which means he probably was against the Adam and Eve story. I'm gonna give you one more person, which is gonna set us up for the whole conversation, right? I'm gonna give you one more person. I'll give you one more person. And now see, all this shit is on the heels. A lot of it's on the heels. Like when it gets turned up for real, in the early 1920s, late 1800s, post supposed slavery, it gets real crazy. That's when we start seeing lynchings. That's when the lynchings started. When they started to downgrade the Black population into being menaced. I'm going to show you an author in a minute by the name of Lothar Stoddard, who wrote a book called The Rise and Color of Tide, which triggers a lot of that stuff that happens in the early 1900s. Let me show you. Give you one more other person to write down. Move him. Stop sharing. Share screen. Charles Davenport. Write him down. Write down Charles Davenport. Let's talk about Mr. Charles Davenport. Charles Davenport. Born in 1866, he died in 1944. Cold Springs Harbor, New York. Cold Springs Harbor, New York. Cold Springs Harbor, New York is where the facility was. Harvard University. Educated. Charles Benedict Davenport was a biologist, eugenics, whole movement, the study of human inheritance, eugenics. Now, you got Charles Davenport. I'm going to show you, what's his name? I'm going to go back and show you Francis Galton in a second. If Francis Galton, I'm going to boomerang you back to Darwin. Davenport was born in Stamford, Connecticut. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's important. See? Abolitionist and Puritan. I just showed you the Quaker a second ago. I just showed you that, what was his name? I just showed his name. That he was of Quaker lineage. This guy's of a Puritan lineage, ancestrally. The colonists. Charles Davenport's first position was a professor of zoology. I just showed you the father of zoology. So he studied him. Carl Linnaeus is the father of zoology. So Charles Davenport studied Carl Linnaeus. Professor at Harvard, where he became one of the most prominent American biologists. At the time, pioneered new quantitative standards for taxonomy. Remember, taxonomy comes from Carl Linnaeus. Write all these names down. Davenport has tremendous respect for biometric approach and hereditary pioneered by English eugenics Francis Galton and Carl Pearson, whom he met in London and was involved in Pearson's journal Biometric. However, after rediscovery of Gregor Mendel's law of heredity, he moved on and became a prominent supporter of Mendelian's inheritance. Mendel's law was basically you can take the light from the dominant, but you can't take the dominant from the recessive. Mendel's law gave us the whole concept of light is recessive and dark is dominant. That's Mendel's law. But all this is still around the same time frame wise, historic timeline wise, 1900s, right into the 1920s, you get Professor Leakey discovering Xanthropus. So Europeans are on the discovery of biology, anatomy, physiology, anthropologists, like they're just digging. They're digging, experimenting. It's going crazy. 1899 to 1904. I can show you in the same time frame. You get people like what's his name? Morton. That's Samuel Morton, the father of gynecology. I can pull him up too, his experiments. 1904, Davenport became director of Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory. He founded the Eugenics Record Office there in 1910. He granted from railroad heresy Mary Harriman, whose daughter, Mary Harriman Ramsey, had worked for Davenport at Cold Springs Harbor while she was a student at Bernard College. During this time at Cold Harbor's laboratory, Davenport began a series of investigations in aspects of inheritance of human personalities, mental traits, and over the years generated hundreds of papers and several books on genetic alcoholism, criminality, feeble-mindedness. This is how they began to classify Negroes in the late 1900s, early 1900s. Were called feeble-mindedness, criminality. This is scientific association through criminal behavior that are labeling on so-called Negroes. Margaret Sanger ends up connecting with this guy, and they put the battery in her back or finance her little situation to then later use what's called negative eugenics. They're going to try positive eugenics by creating the perfect race. This is where Germany gets the card. See, this is the 1900s. Germany don't get the idea until like the 1930s, 38, 41, to eradicate the so-called Jewish race. And German, I'm gonna go back to Eugene Fisher. German scientists credit America for giving them the idea on ethnic cleansing. How they did the so-called Negroes in America. Field-mindedness, tendency to seafaring, bad temper, intelligence, manic depressive, biological effects of race crossing. Now you get the idea of the law in Virginia. Love versus Virginia. It was illegal to cross race, cross breed between white people and black people. Unlawful. Davenport taught eugenic course to many people at the laboratory. It's a laboratory, including Massachusetts strategist Colburn Cattle Elliman. He's like an important person. He was a suffragist, political leader. Elliman's main political participation during the lifetime was suffrage movement, and she was an active member of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. That's now we're about to get to Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger just didn't come up with the idea of Planned Parenthood and eradicating these little Negro babies, which was known as the Negro problem. Let me pull it up. Hold on. Oh, I'm gonna show that too. I just want y'all to see her picture. Right down Charles Davenport. We going in. Hereditary Relations to Eugenics is a book about American eugenics. Charles Davenport published in 1911. It argued that many human traits were genetically inherited. Many human traits were genetically inherited. Like they had to kill the whole breed out, the whole race out, because Black people are just criminals. They're feeble-minded. They're tendency for seafaring and manic depressive. So we had to eradicate the whole race. They're making it make sense. It argued that many human traits were genetically inherited and that it would therefore be possible to selective breed people for desirable traits to improve the human race. Slave breeding farms did not have this information yet. So the idea of slave breeding farms are preposterous. In my opinion. Let's go on. Davenport Research Guide, Racism Classified at the Time. Davenport founded the International Federation of Eugenics Organization in 1925. Eugene Fisher. See how we got back to him? Who's reading about Charles Davenport? I'm going to tell you, we're going to come across Margaret Sanger. I'm going to show you how Margaret Sanger, Eugene Fisher, Charles Davenport. But there's many more. I just gave you names to many more people prior to them. Write these names down. And as always, family, as always, let's see right here. As always, family, if you want to drop some coins in the bucket, I appreciate you. If I'm going in, drop some coins in the bucket. Let me know. You appreciate it. Davenport founded the International Federation of Eugenics Organization in 1925. Eugene Fisher is the chairman and commission on bastardization and miscognization in 27. Davenport aspired to found a world institution for miscegenation and was working on a world map of mixed race areas, which introduced for first time the meeting of the International Federation of Eugenics Organization in München in 1928. Together with his assistants, Morris Staggart, American physician and anthropologist who worked primarily in Central America for the Caribbean population, Davenport attempted to develop a comprehensive quantum approach to human miscegenation. It's a marriage and admixture between people who are members of different races. The word is usually considered and derived from the combination of the Latin term miscegenus. The word appears. Let's see what it is. The theory of blending of all races. They're going down to the genetic level. The results of the research was presented in a book called Race Crossing in Jamaica in 1929. I'm trying to look the book up. Oh, I found the book. Hold on, I found the book. Let's check out the book. Race Crossing in Jamaica. Wow. This Mrs. Davenport. So like I was saying earlier, before we even get to Margaret Sanger, you can't even get there yet. Hold on. Now let's get to Margaret Sanger. She's the founder of Planned Parenthood. This is what everybody know her as. Well, let's go back in time. Let's go back. Margaret Sanger, 1879, came of age during the heyday of Comstock Act the federal statute that criminalized contraceptive. Margaret Sanger believed that not only to change the laws to break it started in 1910, Sanger actively challenged the federal and state Comstock laws to bring birth control information to contraceptive devices to women. Her further ambition was to find the perfect contraceptive to relieve women from horrible strains and repeated unwanted pregnancies. This is what they're saying about her. She's the hero. But Sanger, now in her 70s and poor health, was not ready to give up. She had dreamed of a magic pill for contraception since 1912. She was no longer just concerned about women's suffering from unwanted pregnancies, now a firm believer in the theory of population control. Now she worried about population control. I wonder which population she's worried about controlling. She was worried about potential toll of unchecked population growth on the world's limited natural resources. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So that's on pbs.org, by the way. She was now worried about population control. What else was she worried about? Watch this. Who else was she worried about? This is the one right here. The birth control review. Before it became Planned Parenthood, birth control review. But now I'm about to show you where she got her connection with people like Eugene Fisher and people like Charles Davenport. And this was an entire movement to eradicate the so-called Negroes out of America. And this is just a science level. 1920s, late 1800s, and we haven't got to people like Albert Plecker through paper genocide. This is genetic genocide. He was doing paper genocide to erase a whole group of people. So now you don't know yourself as Indians. Let's call them Negroes. And then call them Black. And then call them African American. Social engineering. Hold on. Right. And they still are. And just back then, they still are. Okay. Let's see if we can see if we can connect the two. Whoop, there it is. Whoop, there it is. Told you. It's called the American Eugenics Society from 1926 to 1972. I think the last euthanization or sterilization was in like 1984 or 85. This Black woman in South Carolina. She was declared to be feeble-minded, and they didn't want her to have children. She had kids anyway. Her sons became doctors and everything. But this is all due to redlining and social disparity came later. It came way later. There's a charge over there. The black chord. Racial disparity and other stuff came later. Let's get into it. The black chord. The American Eugenics Society, AES, was established in the United States by Madison Grant, Harry H. Langan, Harry Crampton, Ivan Fisher, Henry F. Osborne in 1926 to promote eugenics education program for the U.S. public. The AES described eugenics as a study of improving genetic composition of the human through controlled reproduction of different races of classification of people. This is the idea that Margaret Sanger ran with. The AES aided smaller eugenics efforts such as the Galton Society of New York, and the Race Betterment Foundation of Battle Creek, Michigan. And it influenced eugenics policy by a set of U.S. Supreme Court cases, including Buck versus Bell in 1927, Skinner versus Oklahoma in 1942. The AES was renamed the Society for the Study of Social Biology in 1972. Before the formation of the AES, several other eugenic organizations helped lead AES. Other organizations helped to lead the AES. The increasing international interest, the increasing German interest, the increasing interest of Germany in the eugenics from 1904 to 26 spurred a Carthage Institution of Washington in 1904 to create the Station of Experimental Evolution at Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory, Charles Davenport. New York, genetics Albert F. Blakesley and Charles Davenport had helped establish the Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory in 1890. Davenport, the director of Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory, had connections to the Eugenics Records Office and later recruited Langland to serve as ERO director. It's about to give you the whole game. Listen to this now, how these working together. Stay with me, and the prize is I'm gonna take you to out Midwest to Indianapolis and show you the last little circle of Moors who were directly related to the Ben Ishmael tribe. Watch me. Watch how bad it's about to get. I mean, not bad it's about to get, but watch how bad I am on connecting this history. This movement right here, 1912 to 1920, 30s, all through the 50s. This is the Cold Harbor Springs Laboratory. This is eugenics. Now it's turned into what's called negative eugenics. The idea of the positive eugenics in the early 1920s was to increase the European population in North America, but also eradicating other populations. Watch this. Hold on. I'm gonna go here. Okay. We'll come back to that in a second. Another name to write down. This is a book called The Rising Tide of Color Against the White World Supremacy. Write down Lothrop Stoddard. Write that name down. Don't believe a word I say. I'm giving y'all the information to do your own research. I don't give y'all at least, how many names I gave y'all? Somebody in the chat right now put how many names of people have I given y'all? And I'm giving y'all space and time. I'm giving y'all the dates and locations and the people. How many names have I gave y'all? Who's been keeping up with the names? Put a number in the chat of how many names I've given y'all so far. How many names have I given y'all so far? 8. Bruce said he got 8 names so far. 8 names. I don't giving y'all 8 people. 7, 8. Okay. 8. I think about 8 because I've been rattling off some names. I've been rattling some names off the whole time. I give y'all a couple seconds to write the names down. Eight people I've given y'all. Add this name. Add this name. Lothrop Stoddard. Right there. L-O-T-R. Hold on. It's on my screen. L-O-T-H-R-O-P-S-T-O-D-D-A-R-D. Lothrop Stoddard. Write the name down. Eugenics. Eugenics. Theories. Theories. The rising tide of color, the threat against worldwide white supremacy. These are all the areas of the darker races they have to eradicate. They have to eradicate these darker races in these areas. 1920s. Don't just think it was Germany. America, quiet as kept, was doing the same thing. That's why so many photos of lynchings of Negroes. They didn't lynch Negroes during slavery. They have too much money. Too much money. Way too much money. So it wasn't going to lynch them during slavery. This happened after slavery. Let's deal with it. Lothrop Stoddard is a book about racialism and geopolitical, which describes the collapse of the white supremacy and colonialism because of the population growth amongst people of color, rising in nationalism, and the colonized nations. So they're only concerned about the colonies. There's too many Negroes in the colonies. What colonies? All the colonies. North American colonies, Central American colonies, South American colonies. Only place wasn't colonized was Asia. They didn't colonize Asia. They colonized parts of India. They colonized damn near all of Africa. So Asia was the only spot not colonized. Rise of nationalism and colonized nations and industrialization in China and Japan to counter the perceived geopolitical threat. Stoddard advocated a Nordicism racial segregation. I told you the 3 races were the Alpines, the Nordics, and the Aryans. Mainly the Alpines and the Nordics. Let's get into it. If I'm dropping some heat, y'all drop a cash out, man. Drop $1, drop $2. Drop some in that cash out if I'm cooking. Because I'm only about to keep cooking. Like, I'm not turning the heat. You know what? Watch this. Let's do this. Y'all think I'm fucking playing. Y'all falling asleep on me. Let's change the pace a little bit. Let them cook. Stoddard advocated Nordicism, a racial segregation and general racism, restricting non-white immigrants into white majority countries, restricting immigration of non-white members into the Nordic race. 2 countries primarily containing members of the Nordic race, restricting Asian migration to Africa, and slowly giving independence to European colonies in Asia, including the Middle East. A noted eugenics, Stoddard supported the separation of primary races of the world and warned against miscegenation, mixing of races. The Nordic race. The Nordic race is an absolute racial concept which originated in the 19th century anthropology. It was once considered a race or a putative subrace into which some late 19th to 20th century anthropologists divided. Let's dig a little bit deeper on this Nordic race thing. I don't want y'all to miss this. In the 1920s, the rising tide of color against white world supremacy was positively reviewed and recommended by the New York Times. It was recommended by the New York Times. White people at large in America was on board with this nonsense. At large, they were on board with this. And I'm gonna show you something else that kicked this off too. New York Times, Lauder Starter invoked a new pearl that eventually submerged beneath the vast waves of the yellow men, brown men, black men, and red men, whom the Nordic race have hitherto dominated, with Bolshevism menacing us. I don't know what that is. Bolsheviks. Vladimir, Lenin, Vladimir. How ironic is that? You know, Vladimir Putin is in there now. How ironic is Vladimir? For a far left faction of Marxist Russia's Social Democratic Laborist Party, which split into the Minsk Second Party Congress in 1903. Okay. Don't even know that. Menacing us from one race extinction through warfare another, many people are unlikely to give Starter's book respectable consideration. Civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois. That's right. This is the 1920s. W.E.B. Du Bois was around. Marcus Garvey was around. Noble Drew Ali was around. Marcus Garvey came in and said, "Rise, you mighty race of people." Noble Drew Ali said, "You're not Negro, black, and colored, but those are all titles given to slave by slaveholders in 1776, but lasted until about 1865. But this is a new era in time where you must proclaim your free national name and worship under your own vine and fig tree. Take your seat at the table amongst 1,000 men. You have a nationality. You're not Negroes." This is the same era. So any more is talking about anything Noble Drew Ali was talking about in the 1920s. It can't speak to the fact that this information I'm giving y'all right now, they don't have a clue on why he was such a proponent of not calling himself Negroes, and why there was such a rift in the so-called black community. There was the Back to Africa movement started by Garvey, which W.E.B. Du Bois hated the idea of taking Negroes from North America over to a colony in Africa. But that's what Marcus Garvey was a huge proponent of. And that's what Garvey taught. It's exactly what Garvey taught. So anyway, civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois stated that the Nordic people have been responsible for more intermixture of race than any other race, ancient and modern, in reply to white fears of mixing of races. That word is kicking my ass. In replies to white fears of mixing of races, who in the hell asked to marry your daughters? Wow. W.E.B. Du Bois clapped back at Lauder Starter like, anybody asked to marry y'all white daughters? No way. We ain't want to mix with y'all. In reply, oh, they beefing. Lauder Starter, W.E.B. Du Bois beefing. In reply, Starter notions that if the Negroes have separate schools, they shall be good schools. But if they have separate train accommodations, they should have good accommodations. Black audiences allegedly laughed in this belief. What? If the Negroes have separate schools, they shall be good schools. And if they have separate train accommodations, they shall have good accommodation. Good accommodation. Black audience allegedly laughed at Starter's comment. In a 1921 speech to the mixed race audience in Birmingham, Alabama, U.S. President Warren Harding said that Black Americans must have full economic and political rights, but segregation was also essential to prevent racial amalgamation and social equality. What thus a dream that Blacks must give up and use the book to support his segregation views. Whoever will take time to read and ponder Mr. Lauder Starter's book, The Rising Tide of Color, must realize that Our race problem here in the United States is only a phase of race issues that the whole world confronts. Anthropologist
I'm not really
Franz
sure.
Boas. Anthropologist Franz Boas. This is where you get your out of Africa theory from too. I know. Now they about to start telling you come from Africa. See, Franz Boas gave the idea that you're out of Africa. But here's why. Watch this. Watch why that has to be done. They're really just dehumanizing through fractions of pseudoscience, all kind of shit. Watch this. Give me a second. They had to get people like Franz Boas to come up with the out of Africa theory because it's right here. They had to make it from Africa. Slow, feeble-mindedness, dumb, lazy. This is all part of this movement right here. Eugenics. They had to find just cause to eradicate you, get rid of you. You slow. They had to do that. They had to. This is Franz Boas. Well, this ain't him right here, but the out of Africa theory had to be brought about. You're savage. A bunch of savages. Look at you people. Look at you lazy people. Y'all are dumb. Standardized testing, reading and writing, curriculum, base entry. Okay. Let's go back. Let's go back. Franz Boas, the anthropologist Franz Boas criticized the scientific racism presented in the Advocate of the Rising Tide of Color, for which racialists advocated that, the black newspaper of the U.S. called Stoddard the high priest of racial baloney. In the 21st century, the racialism presented by Stoddard remained an ideological influence upon philosophy and political of white supremacy movement in the United States. So even though they criticized it, Franz Boas criticized it, but it remained present and still remains the idea and influence upon philosophy and political and policy of white supremacy movement in America. All right. It's Franz Boas, out of Africa. It was him, and I've got his homeboy name, but I'll write his name down. So it should be 9 or 10 names right now. Write down Franz Euro Boas. He's the reason you think you're from Africa. Out of Africa theory. Was a German-American anthropologist and pioneer of modern anthropology, who's been called the father of American anthropology. He's the father of American anthropology. German. You didn't see that, did you? German, Sweden. When it comes to biology, race classification, species, colonialism, you're going to always see a German scientist, a Swedish scientist, especially in this time frame, 1800s, 1900s. Write him down. Okay, we got Franz Boas. Let's go back to where we were. Hope you guys are taking good notes. Back to the eugenics. In 1906, John H. Catalog, a medical doctor, founded Race Betterment Foundation in Battle Creek, Michigan. The Race Betterment Foundation sponsored 3 conferences between 1914 and 1928. These are the conferences now. They met on this stuff. Cumulative in 1928 formation eugenics registry for family of biological record. The American Museum of Natural History, New York, finance Galting Society. The American Museum of Natural History in New York financed Galton Society. The Galton Society took its name after the founder, Francis Galton, and the United Kingdom Eugenics and cousin Charles Darwin. Francis Galton was the cousin of Charles Darwin. I hope you got Charles Darwin's name written down too. I'm exposed Charles Darwin. I'm gonna give you the real name of the book. They give you the Origin of Species. The Origin of Species by Select. The word select was cut out. I'm going to show you. So it says, the Galton Society took its name after the founder, Francis Galton, a UK eugenics and cousin to Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin. The Galton Society focused on racial anthropology and was involved with the Eugenics Education Society in London, England, which played a major role in 1908 foundation of the English Eugenics Society. In 1912, Leonard Darwin, son of naturalist Charles Darwin, held the first International Congress of Eugenics in London. This is only one conference. The conferences in the 1920s was held in Switzerland. People like Lauder Stoddard attended that one. And we're going back to Margaret Sanger too. Give me a second. The more than 300 people from England, Europe, and the U.S. attended his conference. The growing support for eugenics in the next decade prompted Eugenics Record Office at Coal Harbor Springs Harbor and American Museum of Natural History to sponsor a 1921 Second International Congress of Eugenics in New York, New York. Scientist Alexander G. Bell served honorary president during the Second International Congress of Eugenics. Irvin Fisher. Remember, I gave you Eugene Fisher, right? Irvin Fisher. Ivan Fisher from Yale University, New York Haven, Connecticut, proposed an American Eugenics Society. Fisher stressed a need for widespread eugenics education in the U.S. With the proposal, Osborne, president of the International Congress, appointed an interim committee that worked on the AES until the formal incorporation on 30th January 1926. Fisher served as the society's first president. Davenport, director of Coal Harbor Springs Laboratory, was the first vice president among the Society presidents. Langland, who served as president in 1927-29, promoted eugenical sterilization in the early 20th century. Here comes the negative eugenics. And then we're going back to Margaret Sanger. They were starting what's called sterilization. Ethnic sterilization. Watch this. Watch how I do the research. Hold on. Watch how I do the research. 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 Hey. Under Eugenical Sterilization Act, individuals confined to state institutions afflicted with hereditary forms of insanity are recurrent, idiotic, imbeciles, feeble-mindedness, or epilepsy could be sterilized. Landman, 1932, page 84, under what's called the Eugenical Sterilization Act. If you was considered to be feeble-minded, dumb, slow, can't read, can't write, can't function in society, pretty much. The Virginia Sterilization Act of 1924. This wasn't 100 years ago. 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, whatever. No, this happened after slavery. Now we don't have no more use for you. We're going to lock you up and get rid of you. Wipe you out. The Virginia Sterilization Act 1924 was a U.S. state law in Virginia for sterilization of institutionalized persons afflicted with hereditary forms of insanity that reoccurred. Idiotics, idiot, imbecile, feeble mind, epilepsy. It greatly influenced the development of eugenics in the 20th century. This is not Margaret Sanger. Carrie Elizabeth Buck was the plaintiff in the United States Supreme Court case Buck versus Bell after having been ordered to undergo compulsory sterilization for perpetually being feeble-minded by her foster parents after her nephew raped and impregnated her. After she was raped and impregnated by her nephew, she was reportedly feeble-minded and being forced to be sterilized. This ain't the last case. The last was in 1984-85, forced sterilization. It's been going on, even overseas. Let's bring it back over to America. (1981) is commonly listed the year which Oregon performed its last forced sterilization in U.S. history. However, the forced sterilization have continued in more recent years. This was published in 2021. You can be forcibly sterilized, but the sterilization ideology comes from eugenics, negative eugenics, population control. Been going on. Let's continue. The sign reads, "Sterilization of mothers violates UN Charter." They quoting international law at this point. That's a sister. 70s. This all, the idea of racism, racialism, racial science, not even a real science, wiping out people of color, sterilizing people. Let's get back to this so we can finish up. All right. Multiple committees formed with the AES to target different aspects of eugenics. eugenic education. Examples of such committees include the Committee of Crime Prevention, whose work pushed the Chicago Municipal Courts in Chicago, Illinois, to publish Langland's Eugenical Sterilization in the United States. The credibility of the AES increased due to the involvement of Clark Weiser, curated of anthropology section in American Museum of the Natural History in New York, as well as Wrights, a U.S. geneticist. From 1920s to 1930s, some of the AES works were presented at the state and local fairs. Contestants called fitter family contestants involved popular competitions between families and couples determine who produced the most valuable offspring. They're trying to find out, they're trying to breed the perfect society. And they're trying to get rid of the riffraff of society. And yes, Negroes was considered to be the riffraff of society at that time. And still is. I'm sorry. I didn't want y'all to think that it stopped, because it didn't. The goals of the AES change over the years depending on the different presidencies of the organizations. Henry F. Perkins, who was the president from 1931 to 33, worked with the Birth Control League predecessors, Planned Parenthood. The goal and actions of the AES changed over the years depending on who was in office. President Perkins, who was the president for 31 to 33, worked with the Birth Control League, the predecessor of Planned Parenthood. You guys know about Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, but we go back to what was called the American Birth Control League, which takes you back to Cold Harbor Springs, New York, which takes you back to Charles Davenport, which links you to Johann Blumenbacher, which we can also bring up meaning Samuel Morton, and so on and so forth. It's called the Birth Control League. Let's check out the Birth Control League. Let's check out the Birth Control League. ABCL, also known as the American Birth Control League. ABCL, American Birth Control League, created to free women. Let's cut the riffraff. It said it was created to free women from the chronic condition of pregnancy and dangers of self-induced abortions, and the clinic was shut down by police. You see the picture of Margaret Sanger up there in the corner, right? American Birth Control League. American Birth Control League. Hold on. My bad. I got always down pop-ups. My bad. It says the American Birth Control League, organization that advocated for legalization of contraceptives in the United States and promoted women's reproductive rights and health from its creation in 1921 by Margaret Sanger. Y'all seeing these same dates, right? Late 1800s, 1920s, 1930s. Created by Margaret Sanger, the founder of the American Birth Control League, the founder of the American Birth Control, founder of the American Birth Control movement. The first such organization in the United States, the American Birth Control League, was the predecessor of Planned Parenthood Federation, founded in 1942. The ABCL would, among other activities, promote research on relationships of reckless breeding, fornication, just having babies for no reason, to infant mortality, juvenile delinquency, other problems, provided instruction for harmless, reliable methods of birth control, education to the public regarding moral and scientific soundness of birth control, lobbied for repeal of state federal law impeded on practice birth control, established established branch organization, birth control clinics in every U.S. state and corporate similar organizations. Other countries would aim to alleviate international problems of overpopulation, food shortage, and national racial conflicts. So there's two things that I want to stick with us real quick. Is it's called reckless breeding and juvenile delinquency. So write down reckless breeding and juvenile delinquency being one of the reasons the American Birth Control League went so hammer time, so hard on this idea. Write those two things down. Write down reckless breeding and juvenile delinquency. And then write down national racial conflicts. National racial conflicts. Write that down too. Okay. You got that? It's somebody I forgot to bring up, but we'll go back to that. All right. We got those wrote down. Let's move on to this. Let's go to this. If y'all wrote the whose name now. What happened? We did the lesson on Marcus Garvey and said Franz Boas, and that gave us a mindset of an Africa. Knows own stuff. Yeah. Yeah. That's facts. That's facts. That's what I be telling y'all. The conversation y'all be having with people, man, listen, man. If anybody's giving y'all any information, I don't care where you're hearing it from. I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. Dan Calloway, whoever, Crumb, whoever, giving y'all information. You hold them accountable and ask when. Start asking people when that happened. And I'm not, sending shots at those brothers. I love those brothers. Doing great work. But hold people accountable. If y'all really want to learn this information, man, start asking for dates, time, and space. Start when, who. Don't just sit there and listen to what they got to say. Get in the chat and start questioning it. Hey, when that happened? And then when you start looking at the timeline, linear, like world history, what was happening across the world in 1920. See, I'm showing y'all between the late 1800s and the early 1920s, I'm showing you another side of history. We could talk about the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. We could talk about the Civil War of 1865. We could talk about the founder of Weeksville. All this was happening in the same time. We could talk about Noble Drew Ali. We could talk about Marcus Garvey. This was the same time frame, the late 1800s to mid 1900s. See, like around 1950s. A lot happened in America. Like it exploded. It exploded in America. Went crazy. The First World War is popping off. The sinking of the Lusitania by the German submarine. That was the cause of the First Civil War, supposedly, how we got involved. Because a couple of Americans died on there. And this is like the preamble for the 1940s, which sets up the racial annihilation of the Jews in Germany. It also sets up something else called the Holocaust. The Holocaust of the 1940s, which made you again forget about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You didn't even hear about that. That happened around the same time frame. You heard about it, but there's not much emphasis put on it because a lot was happening in those time frames. Let's say 1855 to about 1975, because I want to make sure I cover Vietnam War also. Talk about that crap. So we had about 3 or 4 wars, a couple different skirmishes before then too. All that was happening Racial disparity. The Asian American culture in America went through a tough time too. From the building of the railroads, Orientals they called them, which is no longer right to say. I don't condone that usage of the word Oriental, but they call them Oriental. I can show you what's called the Oriental Express. I'm gonna show you his first set of kids, orphan kids who put to work. Black orphans too, lending out kids to work. The movie like Orphan Annie, the movie Orphan Annie. Another movie too, little girl and the orphan. The orphanage was huge. They were called asylums. We'll talk about asylums. Free labor, and the reason they had to invoke child labor laws. This is all out of a need of them breeding the perfect population too. Baby boomers, the idea of test tube babies, that Cold Harbor Springs facility, Mr. Davenport, and I'm sure all those 8, 9 names I just gave y'all. Look at the dates. When you pull it, look at the dates around their names. Franz Boas included, Marcus Garvey included. Look at the dates around those names. You're going to see a time span from like the late 1855, 56, sometimes 42, to about 1926, 1930 at least. That's you're going to see them that time frame. Because in that same time frame, not only did America have a Racial Integrity Act. That's your boy in Virginia, Albert Plecker. Around the same time frame. It's called paper genocide. When you say anybody with one drop of Negro blood in you makes you African, off the rip. Don't even matter. Where would he get the idea from? Albert Plecker wasn't an anthropologist. Where would Albert Plecker get the idea from about genetics determining your tribal affiliation? Because the tribes never went by your blood. Of course, you were born into tribes, but a lot of tribes in America were amalgamated tribes. Like the Cimarron, we call it Cimarron tribe. That was an amalgamation of the Yamacraw, Yamansi, and Gullah Geechee, and Maroons. So yeah, you're right. The Naturalization Act. Islam, babe. The Naturalization Act also. A lot of people don't know about the Naturalization Act. Now, the Naturalization Act was also revamped a couple of different times too. But the Naturalization Act, pretty much the premise gave Europeans, it naturalized Europeans to America. Now you're nationalized. They had to become naturalized. There's a naturalization process and there's a nationalization process. See, the word national or nation comes from the word tribe, kin. That's the etymology of nationality or nation. Your tribal affiliation, your kinfolks. Naturalization was an act that had to be naturalized. Well, quite naturally, you're from here. It created the category of white folks. But the category of white folks, the idea of white comes from him. Johann Blumenbacher. See, I can take you right back to it. Right back to it. It's called pseudoscience. He has been called the founder, right here. He has become the founder of racial classifications. He's the founder, the idea of white, black, red, Negroes. Well, he didn't color code them. He called them Negroes. Right here. Okay, right here. It's right here. He was one of the first to explore the study of human beings and we could talk about human beings and humans also one day. but human being is an aspect of natural history. His teachings, comparative, his teachings, comparative and anatomy. Let's look up anatomy. Here we go. Comparative anatomy. It's the study of similarities and differences in anatomy of different species. It closely related to evolutionary biology. What he was teaching, oh, my thing's in the way. Hold on, I'm sorry. Let me get my banner out the way. There we go. So him, Charles Darwin, later in the 1920s, what I told you his name was, I didn't give you his name yet. I'm gonna show you his name right now. Dr. Leakey in 1920s. But his classification were right here. The Caucasian, he was the first one to use the term Caucasians. Caucasian, Mongoloids, Malinoids, Ethiopian, and American. He was a member of what was modern history as the Gaganin School of History. He is considered to be a pivotal figure in development of physiological anthropology. Blumenbach peers considered him one of the great theorists, not law, not fact, just theories. Theorists of the day, and he was a mentor and influence of many the next generation of German biologists, including Alexander von Humboldt. Blumenbach was born in the house of Gotha. He was German. You're gonna keep saying German, Swedish. I keep telling you that. Let's go back. Influx of children, babies are everywhere, just born for no reason, right? Black families were huge back then. 16, 17 kids. A lot of our grandparents come from populations like that. 14, 12, 11, 10 kids. Huge. This was a threat. The minority population, hold on. The minority population increase became a threat. This is called War-Born Orphaned Children of American Civil War and Evolution of Orphan Care. War breed victims were the victims of malicious, malignant soldiers, widows, spouses, childless parents, or parentless, a childless parent or parentless child. War will always create sorrow. The American Civil War claimed lives of 750,000 soldiers by 1865. This figure is not accounted for incalculable suffering of American civilians who had to navigate the war without loved ones. Give me some numbers. Give me some numbers. The war left tens of thousands of children orphaned or half orphaned, meaning the children lost a father but still had a mother. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the number of orphaned children housed in orphanage rose from 7,700 in the 1850s to 60,000 in 1880. Between 1861 and 65, many of the farms and much of the infrastructure with the Confederate States damaged and destroyed, enormous battle and bombarded. As a result, many Southern children experienced the pain of war firsthand. For example, two of Virginia's most prominent orphan asylums in Richmond, Female Hannon Association, in Richmond, Male Orphan Asylum, Though established before the Civil War, these organizations became fruition during the conflict reconstruction. They were typically ran by the board directors and as well as the president. Before the war, organizations like the RFAH and RMOA would often reserve placement for children of wealthy upper middle class parentage. After the war was declared, the care of the orphan children, Confederate soldiers quickly became society's badge of honor. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the good stuff. And I'm only smiling like this because I'm about to blow y'all mind. Here we go. Now, we're talking about the orphans. I'm going to show y'all what orphan asylums eventually came for Black folk. The Colored Orphan Asylum was an institution in New York City opened in 1836. I keep telling y'all, I'm telling y'all the time period. Matter of fact, whatever you're making notes at right now, at the top of your paper, put time, T-I-M-E, then put 1830 to 1940. 1830 to 1940. Put that on your paper right now. And those are the only time periods we're dealing with. I'm gonna teach y'all in time periods. So everything I talk about is gonna be between 1830 and 1940. We're not gonna go past 1940. We're not gonna go above 1830. Mainly because of this reason right here. And we're gonna come back to this. The Third Great Awakening.
According to the University of Chicago Press, Third Great Awakening, 1890 to 1930, shift from emphasis on personal to social sin, rise in belief that poverty is not a personal failure, the wages of sin, but a societal failure that can be addressed by the state, shift to more secular interpretation of the Bible and Creed.
The Third Great Awakening. Now, either underneath or out beside the date I just gave you, write 1890, 1930. As a matter of fact, you can write it within the time I just gave you because I just told you 1830 to 1940. So now 1890 to 1930, put Third Great Awakening. And let's explore for a second what else was going on between 1890 and 1930. It's called the Third Great Awakening, by the way. Huge religious movement. Lots of religion. Loads, just a whole bunch of religions. It was a huge, big. How big was the Third Great Awakening in this time period? Write them down. Write down Father Divine. Write down Father Divine. Write down Father Divine. Also known as Reverend M.J. Divine, was an American spiritual leader in 1907. I'm giving y'all the game. So while we had these racists going through America, establishing these institutions and laws and different ideologies, trying to eradicate a race of people, this was also happening at the same time. You guys have to understand history in totality, what was going on across the board. Time and space. Somebody mentioned something about Negroes being lynched and chased down by hound dogs and beaten to death, ripped apart by dogs. And then you have a time period you can go to in your mind, like, oh, that was after slavery. It was okay. I see what we're doing right now. We're not talking about during slavery, which is supposedly the late 1700s up until like 1861, as it's taught in history. Father Divine was an American spiritual leader from about 1907 to his death in 1965. His full self-given name was Reverend Major Jealous Divine. He's also known as the Messenger. He's also known as the Messenger. He's also known as the Messenger. Early in his life, he was founded international peace mission movement, formed its doctrine and oversaw the growth of small, predominantly Black congregations into a multiracial international church. Due to his ideology, many consider him to be a cult leader claiming to be God. He claimed to be God. He made numerous contributions toward followers' economic independence and racial equality. See, the idea of racial equality spawns out of the sect of the pseudoscience I just gave you. People like Davenport and the individuals who really were champions of non-racial equality, non-race mixing. So this idea of racial equality really spawns out of this science that we just went over. That the idea of it, like the schism of it, comes out of this idea that if you mix the races, that weakens the genetic pool of Caucasians to something different than what it should be, which is this, that its origin should be a powerful conquering race, which the supposed perfect race for them would be the Alpines or the Nordic people. And if you need an idea of what they look like, think of Thor. Think of the god Thor. Think of the god Beowulf. You would get something like that. Okay. Which he founded international peace mission movements, formed his doctrine, and oversaw the growth of small, predominantly Black congregations. Let's keep going. He was contemporary of other religious leaders such as Daddy Grace, Charles Harris Mason, Noble Jew Ali, James F. Jones, also as Prophet Jones, Wallace Farad Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, Jimmy Swaggart. He was a contemporary, meaning around the same time. Let's go to another one. Sweet Daddy Grace, better known as Charles Manuel Sweet Daddy Grace or Daddy Grace, was the founder of and first bishop and predominantly African-American dominated United House of Prayer for All People. He was a contemporary of other religious leaders such as Father Divine, Drew Ali, Ernest Holmes, and many of his followers claimed miraculous acts of faith healing while attending service, and saw his ministry as a sign of God, imminent return of Jesus Christ. He said he was Jesus incarnated. Sweet Daddy Grace. His people are from the Cape Verde Islands. Let's read this. His parents were Gertrude and Marcino, Marcy, Lino, DeGrassi. Had 5 siblings, considered one of the brothers, I cannot say their name, Benaventure, 4 sisters, Eugene, Silva, Amelia, Louise. He was born January 25th in Bravo in the Cape Verde Islands, then Portuguese possession off the west coast of Africa. There is no verifiable information to confirm Grace's exists birth year. Most sources says 1881 or 84. The family, blah blah blah, Massachusetts. Ship called the Freeman in 1902. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. After leaving his job as a railway cook, he was a cook, a chef, crazy. Using his angelized version of his name, Charles Emmanuel. Grace began using the title bishop in 1919. He built the first house of prayer in West Waymore, Massachusetts, at the cost of $39. He later established a branch in Charlotte, North Carolina, Newark, New Jersey. I wonder who else was in Newark, New Jersey in the 1920s, or before the 1920s. Who else was in Newark, New Jersey? Does anybody else know who was in Newark, New Jersey? A religious leader? Moors. They all speak up at the same time, Moors. Who else is in Newark, New Jersey at this time frame? Throughout the 1920s, 30s, Bishop Grace traveled America preaching, establishing a United House of Prayer to all people, constituted by bylaws. United House of Prayer, promulgated in 1929, organized, erect, maintained. For the bishop and his followers, miraculous stories told the apostles in the New Testament and the Bible did not end with their deaths. Grace asserted that such miracles were available again through him. As David Grace, the bishop leader in United House of Prayer, also known, respecting him and his followers, faith healers, miraculous works. Who else was there in the 1920s? This is the same time. I just showed y'all Margaret Sanger and Eugene Fisher. All these. This is the same time frame. Dealing with race. This gentleman was a little bit smarter. Much like Marcus Garvey, his platform ran on race and nationality during a time that race was being challenged. This brother stood up and said, "You're not Negroes, by the way." And to the question I asked earlier, this is who I was talking about, who's in Newark, New Jersey, around the same time. The other guy just showed you, Daddy Grace was up there too. Same time frame, y'all. Same time frame. In fact, I'm gonna go off script for a second. We're gonna come back to eugenics and the orphans and all that stuff. Watch this. Let's read the whole thing. Fuck it. Noble Drew Ali, or Timothy Drew, was an American religious leader who in the early 20th century founded a series of organizations that ultimately placed under the umbrella of Moorish Science Temple, including the Canaanite Temple from 1913 to 1916. Write down, this is a whole different lesson right quick. I'm gonna give you a whole different lesson right quick. On a separate piece of paper, write this down, Canaanite Temple or Old Canaanite Temple. Write down 1913, 1916, Old Canaanite Temple, Newark, New Jersey. You have Wet, which is the Old Canaanite Temple. You have Where, which is Newark, New Jersey. You have When, 1913, 1916. Those are three things you need to know right there. What, where, when. Okay? Including the Canaanite Temple, the Moorish Divine National Movement, and the Moorish Divine and National Movement, the Moorish Temple of Science, which is something totally different than the Moorish Science Temple. You have to know that, okay? It says, and the Moorish Science Temple of America. Onward. Those are different organizations. It's the Canaanite Temple, the Moorish Divine National Movement, the Moorish Temple of Science, and then the Moorish Science Temple of America. Those are four different organizations. He founded a series of organizations. So when you ask the Moors, are you of the National Divine Movement? Are you of the Temple of Science? Are you the Moorish Science Temple or the Canaanite Temple? Which one are you under? There's four. Considered a prophet by his followers, he founded the Canaanite Temple. Let's read more about the Canaanite Temple real quick. This is off script. He founded the Canaanite Temple in 1913 while living in Newark, New Jersey. From there, he made his way westward, eventually settling in Chicago between 1922 and 25. You're going to see a lot of people going to Chicago and Detroit and Ohio. Detroit, Chicago. A lot of those organizations are going to be in the area. Now, next after this, you'll see that the Nation of Islam comes up around Detroit, Chicago, New York, Jersey. It's like the area for anything religious out of the Third Great Awakening. If you go to places like Newark, New Jersey right now, they have the remnants of this movement is still there. A lot of black Muslims, Hebrews, New York the same way, Chicago the same way, Detroit the same way, and Ohio. Those are the hot zones, which were most affected by the Third Great Awakening during that time period I told you about. Let me show y'all something real quick on the same note. I did a lecture called Negro Leaders on my Instagram, Negro Leaders. This is Newark, New Jersey. This is the old Canaanite temple. Not sure if you guys can make it out in the background. I'm I can zoom in for you a little bit. The Moorish Zionist temple. The Moorish Zionist temple. This is the old Canaanite temple. Y'all see that? New York and New Jersey. Hold on. Got somebody in the comments over here. Hold on. Prophet Noble Drew Ali found the Moorish Science Temple of America in 19. That's not true. No, he didn't. No, he did not. The only thing that Timothy Drew did in Newark, New Jersey was he reestablished the old Canaanite temple. He ended up leaving there. I can show you why he left. And then he went to Chicago. He opened up the Moorish Science Temple in Chicago. He didn't found the Moorish Science Temple in 1913 in Newark, New Jersey. I'm showing you the old Canaanite temple right now in Newark, New Jersey. Looked like it was already there. He didn't pull a Columbus, did he? That temple was already there. Yeah, they were already there, bro. He just went to reestablish. He just went to reestablish. What's the point of this? This is all during Third Great Awakening time period. That time period I gave y'all, this is that time period. This is that time period. Here's what you're talking about. This is what Noble Drew Ali found it right here. This is in Chicago, not New York. I mean, not New Jersey. And this he did do. But he went to reestablish the old Canaanite temple. This is all part of the Third Great Awakening. At this, I don't want nobody to think we somewhere different. This was happening. Hold on. That was happening the same time this was happening. 1920s. This was happening at the same time. Y'all just don't think of history as a totality. My mind works in totality, like what was happening everywhere. Most of me have conversations with people about history. They talk about one area for as far as like a subject matter. I'm teaching y'all to understand the entire time period. The rise of a colored tide threat against white world supremacy, 1920. I can show you Noble Drew Ali, 1928, standing on the steps in Chicago, 8 years after this came out. 1913, Drew Ali is in New Jersey. From what I was taught and told, he was on a milk crate on the corner, telling people they're not black, they're not Negroes, they're not colored folks. At the same time, people like this guy right here had just sought the stage for that ideology to come in the 1840s. Like this guy just sought the idea for people being called Caucasians, Ethiopians, Negroes. Morris Scientific taught you that Ethiopia means something divided. Meanwhile, he's coming up with terminology to classify you as black, Negro, and colored. Colorism. We just learned about the science of colorism. I'm showing y'all all this shit was happening at the same time. And that's how we have to learn and think. This is happening simultaneously, not different time periods, all at the same time. While they're having conferences about the perfect white race around the world, a global conversation for race. So while that was happening, while Noble Drew Ali was happening, this was happening. The birth control league was happening. See, 1930 to 31, 33, I'm sorry. Birth control league, 1921. Lauder Stoddard, 1920. Noble Drew Ali, 1920. Father Divine. This is happening all at the same time in America. That's all I'm trying to show y'all. The brilliancy of understanding history at a totality. All of it. All of it. Not just the cool parts of the part that make, like all of history. By 1930, 1,260 members. Although New York and California, Massachusetts were states with the highest membership, every state in the U.S. had at least one member. Every state had one member that belonged to this American Eugenics Society. 1930 cohorts of AES consisted predominantly of wealthy men and women, the wealthy class. And I don't have time, but I can show you how the Boule Society of Negroes were born out of this ideology as well, by keeping the smartest Negroes into one category of people of society. Rich Negroes don't deal with the vagabond Negroes of society. They don't deal with them. The criminals, and they hope their daughters don't deal with them and their sons don't deal with them. They try to raise a perfect society of Negroes, high standards, morals, wealth. That's the Boule. So this affected societies as a whole, not just white people. The 5 Princeton conferences of 1964-69 in Princeton, New Jersey. I'm gonna keep showing y'all the same. I don't know if y'all catching this shit or not. I'm showing y'all the same locations, the same. I showed y'all 4 or 5 German scientists. I showed you the direct link. Eugene Fisher is the direct, and I'll show him again. The direct link to set up the premise for Jewish extermination of the Holocaust in Germany. From the 1960s to 70s, the AES gathered together research from different disciplines and provided people with a place to discuss human evolution. Scientists involved with the group noted that the factors of society of social, physical, environmental influence, hereditary, and human development. Researchers increasingly studied living conditions, lifestyle, habits of people, and mainly large medical schools. There were facilities for medical genetic research, where newly established hereditary clinicals served as a base for modern genetic counseling centers. To define the new research that's focused on 69, the official publication of the AES switched its name from Eugenics Quarterly to Social Biology. So anything you see with social biology, it used to be eugenics, society, socialization, social engineering, all of it, because they studied human environments, they studied the physical environments, how it influence heredity development. This is socialization. The 1972 AES was renamed Society for Study of Social Biology, but it used to be called the AES, the American Eugenics Society. Anybody in school, college for social degree or biological degrees, all that kind of stuff, these are your forefathers we just talked about. These are your forefathers. Another name just came to me too. I'm sorry. Another name just popped in my head. It went away. No, it came back. Write this name down. Dr. J. Marion Sims. Dr. J. Marion Sims. Write that name down. J. Marion Sims. All my ladies out there, go to the gynecologist. Ask your gynecologist about J. Marion Sims. Don't tell your gynecologist what you know about J. Marion Sims. Just see what he or she says about J. Marion Sims. In the 1840s, I gave you a time period. I said 1830 to, I said 18, what I said? 1830 to 1930. What I said about the time frame? Somebody put in the chat the time frame I just gave y'all. In the 1840s, the Alabama physician James Marion Sims conducted infamous experimental gynecological surgery exclusively on Black women, bound to a surgical table by chattel slavery. Physically forced and opiumed. He didn't give him opium. I'll tell you what he said about that. The drug did not allow their pain, and some historians think that they even became addicted to it. He's the father of modern gynecology. His name is J. Marion Sims. Ladies, ask your gynecologists about him and see what they say. All right. Let's do a quick recap. Before we shut it down, let's do a quick recap. Quick recap. You should have Charles Davenport. He's gonna be one of your main characters. Charles Davenport. Who else should you have it down? I'm just doing a quick recap before we get up out of here. I want you to remember him, Eugene Fisher. You should have Eugene Fisher written down, please. Eugene Fisher. Fisher ideas formed the Nuremberg's Law. His ideas influenced law. The Nuremberg's Law were anti-Semitic and racist laws that were enacted in Nazi Germany on the 15th of September, 1935. At a special meeting at the Reichstags convened during the annual whatever. Nuremberg's Law of 1935. would serve as justify the Nazi Party belief in Germany that racial superiority to other races, and especially Jews. Adolf Hitler read Fischer's work while he was in prison in 1923. You want to see who influenced Hitler to think this way? Eugene Fischer. Adolf Hitler read Fischer's work while he was in prison in 1923, and Eugene Fischer, it says, and used Eugene Fischer's eugenic notions to support his vision on a pure Aryan society in his manifesto, Mein Kampf. Who influenced Hitler to act the way he acted towards Jews? Eugene Fischer. Did y'all know that? Did y'all think that Hitler just came up with this stuff by himself? And I'm not advocating for it, but did y'all think that Hitler just came up with this shit by himself? You think Hitler just was a genius? No. Eugene Fischer. And we're going to go on about Eugene Fischer because I'm going to tie him back to America. Even though he's a German guy, watch this. After the war, his complete memoirs is believed that he lessened his role as a genetical genocide of Nazi Germany. He died in 1967. After the war, he completed his memoirs, and it's believed that he lessened his role. He had a role in it. Look at this. In 1906, Fischer conducted field research in Germany, in German Southwest Africa. German Southwest Africa. Wow. That's a colony. There's no such thing as German Southwest Africa, no more than the Middle East. He studied bastards. The bastards are a South African ethnic group descended from Cape Coloured in Nam Kassel origin. Since the second half of the 19th century, the Rehoboth bastard community has been concentrated in central Namibia and around the town of Rehoboth. Bastards are closely related to African something. I never knew that. Now I'm slightly intrigued to know more. He studied the bastards' offspring or of German and Boer men. Boers, descendants of Proto-African speaking free burghers of Eastern Cape frontier Southern African during the 17th, 18th, and 19th century, from 1652 to 1795. Boers are descendants of the Proto-African speaking free burghers. Never knew that. He studied the bastards' offspring of German Boer, of German or Boer men and Black African. Oh, okay. So he's studying the amalgamation between the two races, women in the area. His study concluded that would call him to prevent production of mixed race. He was reverse engineering Yakub. He was reverse engineering the story of Yakub. If you know the story of Yakub, he took the brown and the Black German, separated the two. Well, he's studying the reverse engineering of that. By his prohibition of mixed marriages, such as those he had studied, it included human experiments in these areas of Africa, these people. So he just experimenting on people with this pseudoscience, with this bullshit. He recommended that they should not continue to reproduce. He recommended that those people should not continue to reproduce. His recommendations were followed by 1912 interracial marriage, which prohibited throughout Germany colonies. The German colonies in Africa. He coming to Africa and saying, y'all can't even fuck no more because y'all are producing the right kind of stock of people we need. Now it sounds like the Anunnaki. As a persecutor, to his experiments on Jews in Nazi Germany. He collected bones and skulls for his study and part of his medical experiment on African prisoners of the war in Libya during the hero, whatever that genocide is. Let's look at genocide up. This is crazy. It was a campaign of ethnic extermination and collective punishment, which was waged against the people of that area in Germany, Southwest Africa by German Empire. It was the first genocide to begin in the 20th century. This ain't even talking about Leopold. We're not talking about Leopold. This ain't even dealing with Leopold. Okay? If you're familiar with Leopold, he cutting off hands in the Congo. It's not even the Congo area. They're exterminating. This is the African Holocaust they don't tell you about. And this guy influenced Hitler to start the Jewish Holocaust in Germany. But this is the same thing that's happening in America with people like, let me show you. Where's it at? Same time period. Watch the time periods. It's going to be important, family. Now you understand? This was all white people. Late 1800s to the early 40s, 50s, all the way to the Tuskegee Project, all the way up to COVID, whatever you want to call it. This was international white supremacy against any race that was not pure Alpine, Nordic, or Aryan. In America, everywhere. The colonial powers now sought to reduce the population of the indigenous people. They first come to the shores of the indigenous people. Trick, dupe, war, kill, smallpox blanket, trail of tears, lock up, lock away, lynch, enslave, everywhere. This story is not just in North America. This story is international. It's international slavery. You got Stoddard already did the analysis in the 1920s. This is a publication. This is a publication. This went everywhere. Called scientific racism. This is everywhere. So while we're seeing this happen in Germany, I just talked to you about, what's his name? Charles Davenport. Eugene Fisher. I could also show you Lauder Stoddard in America doing the same thing. Lauder Stoddard actually attended these conferences. The book also warned the dangers of race mixing and the need for white countries to maintain their racial purity. The thesis is due to the immigration, white people produce fewer children, so it gave them capital to live in a white community. It says, as long as the people of the community are relatively homogeneous, what difference of wealth and social position there may not be to do affect the birth rate, or so only after considerable time put into the community a number of immigrants, inferior mental, social, and economically, and the native are willing to have their children associated with them in work and social life. They then limit the number of children in order to give them capital of education to enter occupation in which they will not be brought into contact with new arrivals. They were serious about this, man. Stoddard argued that the increasing population and the economic power of non-white races, particularly in Asia, will lead to collapse in civilization. Typified the situation in Latin America, which he described the mongrels. Is a marriage of admit between members of different races of the world. He was going hard too. Political ascension, saying further that these unhappy beings, every cell in whose body is battleground for jarring heredities, express their souls in acts of hectic violence and aimless instability. The normal state of tropical America is anarchy, restrained only by domestic tyrants and foreigner masters. Startup theses is that white race has dominated world affairs for centuries and has created a civilization that is superior to all others. That is Mr. Lothrop Stoddard. Let's see this cat. There he is. He looks racist. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry, but look at him. It looked like something wrong with him. He was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, where his book recommended reading. He was also a member of the American Eugenics Society. I told you. Margaret Sanger, Eugene Fisher, Charles Davenport, Lothrop Stoddard. Okay. He was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, where his book was recommended reading. He was also a member of the AES, as well as a founding member and board member of the American Birth Control League, which later became Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Told y'all. Told y'all. Told y'all. If I ain't did nothing else today, man, I know for a fact that I gave y'all some information today. I know for a fact that I went in a little bit. It's just how I feel. It's how I feel. And I'm gonna give y'all just a little bit more. All I ask for is a little bit more. There's 44 people in here. There's 44 people. $1 a quarter. I'm not on here soliciting because I don't need it, but like, come on, man. I'm fucking cooking today a little bit. Just a little bit. And just in the way we're doing it. This is also the same time period where the Rockefeller started brainwashing. Yes, sir. There's a part I didn't get to, Deshaun, was and I might go to it real quick. Those orphan asylums I had started showing y'all, those orphan asylums, especially the Black orphan asylums, end up becoming HBCUs. So that's how Rockefeller's wife, Spelman, Howard University, at the General Howard, these agricultural schools, actually. I did a piece on that before. Those orphan asylums the children were going to ultimately turns into HBCUs. I can show you that. I can show you that around that same time period. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you that. Good catch. Good catch. I'm gonna drop this video real quick because I want y'all to see something. I want y'all to pay attention to this video. Then I'm gonna come back and break down the video.
about unlettered, untutored, relatively uneducated peoples coming in large numbers, the sense that disease was a problem. All of these worries were amalgamated into a belief that immigrants caused these problems, and thus immigration should be held down.
Many white Protestant Americans came to fear they were about to be outnumbered and outbred by the newcomers and their offspring, that they were being replaced. They embraced a new pseudoscience born in Britain called eugenics, which falsely claimed, with no evidence, that everything from poverty to prostitution, disabilities to what they called feeble-mindedness, could be eliminated if the individuals they dismissed as socially defective could be stopped from reproducing.
I wish very much that the wrong people could be prevented entirely from breeding. And when the evil nature of these people is sufficiently flagrant, this should be done. Criminals should be sterilized, and feeble-minded persons forbidden to leave offspring behind them. Theodore Roosevelt.
The idea was that the bad people have to stop reproducing, and the good people need to reproduce more. Negative eugenics says sterilize the wrong people, snuff them out. And that's the eugenics that the Nazis would pick up on.
Colleges and universities taught eugenics. Medical societies confirmed it. Clergymen preached it. John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie funded it. And some of the most prominent people in America championed it. Margaret Sanger, Alexander Graham Bell, even Helen Keller.
It seems to me that the simplest, wisest thing to do would be to submit cases like that of the malformed idiot baby to a jury of expert physicians. If the evidence were presented openly and the decisions made public before the death of the child, there would be little danger of mistakes or abuses. We must decide between a fine humanity and a cowardly sentimentalism.
33 of the 48 states would eventually enact eugenics laws mandating the forced sterilization of wards of the state deemed physically or mentally unfit. People in prisons, hospitals, and asylums. More than 60,000 Americans would be sterilized without their consent.
Told you about them
before
asylums.
the last of these statutes was removed from the books in 2014.
Wow. Wow.
Eugenics also provided a racist rationale for those convinced immigration needed to be drastically curtailed.
Listen.
The man of the old stock is being crowded out of many country districts by these foreigners, just as he is today being literally driven off the streets of New York City by the swarms of Polish Jews. These immigrants adopt the language of the American. They wear his clothes, they steal his name, and they are beginning to take his women. But they seldom adopt his religion or understand his ideals. And while he's being elbowed out of his own home, the American looks calmly abroad and urges on others the suicidal ethics which are exterminating his own race. Madison Grant.
Madison Grant was a widely admired conservationist, a friend of presidents, a founder of the Bronx Zoo, responsible in part for saving the California redwoods and preserving the buffalo, and instrumental in creating Glacier, Denali, and Everglades national parks.
And he was also a violent anti-Semite and a violent anti-Italian. And he really was horrified by what he saw happening on the streets of New York. So he publishes a book called The Passing of the Great Race, in which he puts forward the idea that nationalities have eugenic characteristics. He fills it with all sorts of interesting historical so-called data, which is mostly crazy, but it's very persuasive. And it does give the anti-immigration movement, it suddenly gives them science. Science says if we let them in, then they're going to destroy the American gene pool.
For Grant and many others, Jews were a distinct race, not considered white, dismissed as uncouth Asiatics. Grant's supposedly scientific claims about a rigid hierarchy of races was ludicrous. The biological notion of race itself is a fiction. But his ideas caught the imagination of those Americans already opposed to immigration.
People tended to increasingly view nationalities as if they were breeds or species. To liken nationalities to breeds was a fundamental categorical mistake.
Hi, I'm Sarah Botstein. Thanks for watching that.
Oh, sorry. What I was saying was they was just talking about nationality. I was telling you that Noble Drew Ali was talking about nationality in that same time frame. So again, it's the time frame that we're dealing with. More importantly, what's happening, who, where, and what, when. That's the important thing for me. All right. I think I want to show y'all one more thing before we get up out of here. So, remember a little bit earlier I told you about the Ben Ishmael tribe. If you never heard the Ben Ishmael tribe, look up the Ben Ishmael tribe. We don't have time to really get into it today. But the Ben Ishmael tribe got some ties that goes back here in North America. I'm talking about, we're not over in Israel, and no, we're right here in North America dealing with the Ben Ishmael tribe. The Ishmaels, known locally for abstaining from the wage labor economy of Indianapolis, received attention from eugenics advocates starting in the 1877 with Reverend, remember I told you about the Great Awakening? Y'all listen to what I'm telling y'all? Like, I hope y'all listening. With Reverend Oscar McCulloch and his assistant, James Frank Might. Let's read on more. As a matter of fact, let's go back. The name Ben Ishmael tribe, the tribe of Ishmael, were applied to poor upland southern residents of Indianapolis, Indiana, during the late 19th and 20th century. The time frame is not going to change. Next time we talk, we go to the next time frame. This time frame is for the late 19th century to the early 20th century, which is the 1800s and the 1900s. 1830 to 1940. 1830 to 1940. Those are the time period we talked about, right? Because of their supposed association with the Ishmael family. Let's learn who the Ishmael family is. You might not know who this is. This is the Ishmaelite tribe. These are the tribes of Abraham's other son. Okay, Isaac was one son, Ishmael was one son. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the Ben Ishmael, like the son of Ishmael. Ben Ishmael. The name Ben Ishmael tribe were applied to poor upland southern resident in Indianapolis during the 19th, 20th century because of their supposed association with the Ishmael family. Records of the Ishmael family shows that it originally hailed from the Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, and its patriarch Benjamin Ishmael served as the American Continental Army during the Revolutionary War. Wow. the patriarch Benjamin Ishmael. Write him down. The Ishmaels, known locally for abstaining their wage labor economy in Indianapolis, received attention from the eugenics advocates starting in 1877, Reverend Oscar McCall, and assistant James Frank Wright. Following McCall's published report in 1888 regarding the tribe Ishmael eugenics, such as Charles Estabrook and Harry Langland used the family to argue the sterilization laws called an Indiana Plan. The family name was also invoked during the congressional hearings that led the passage of the Immigration Act of 1924. The family name also invoked during congressional hearing that led to the passing of the Immigration Act of 1924. After mostly slipping out of the nation consciousness, much of the 20th century history of the Ishmael tribe was racially radically reinvented by Hugo Prosper Leeming, an essay called "The Ben Ishmael Tribe: The Fugitive Nation of the Old Northwest." Leeming argued that the family was not supposedly a poor white Christian family, but actually a Muslim triracial sect of indigenous people of Europe and enslaved Africans. Much of Leeming's narrative was refuted by extensively researched in 2009 book, Inventing America's Worst Family, Eugenics, Islam, and the Fall and Rise of the Tribe of Ishmael by Nathan Detchison, a professor of literature and history in the University of California, Santa Cruz. 1877, Oscar McCall moved to Indianapolis from Soubignon, Wisconsin, to become a minister of a Protestant Plymouth church due to surging population and economic crisis known as the Panic of 1873. McCoy entered Indianapolis during the period of widespread poverty. Many of the urban Indianapolis at the time were migrants from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia, and other regions of the upper Southland. Among these migrants were families with the surname Ishmael, who became the subjects of a decade-long study. McCoy recorded in his diary that was aware of Richard Delane's. Who was this? American race sociologist. The Jukes, study on the Jukes. The Juke family was a New York Hill family studied in the late 19th century. The study was a part of the other studies, including Calcutt's, the Zeros, the Nams were often quoted as arguments in support of eugenics through origin of the Jukes. This helped form the belief that poverty was hereditary, was a hereditary matter and not simply environmental one. Wow, that they were just poor by bloodline. The Ishmaelites. So there was a tribe called the Ben Ishmael. This is in America, by the way. The family described was tow-headed, white blonde, aside from their half-breed, half-Native American mother. The Ishmaels were explained to have wandering blood, causing them to gypsy or travel wagons east or westward. In addition, the Ishmaels were known for lightness. Come for a second. This is right here. Now it's this.
Hold on. Is that an L?
Licentiousness. Yes. Wow. Some words. Licentiousness, which characterized the men and women and their lifestyles, was encouraged by almost unlimited public and private aid. McCulloch claimed that the Ishmael clan had a criminal record, mostly prostitution, thieving, larceny, and even murder, while making up 3/4 of his hospital cases in Indianapolis. The grim picture was summed up by McCulloch claim they are underran society like devil's grass. Pick one up and whole 5,000 would be drawn up. Due to the force and heredity, with each generation would likely repeat and like a crime, immorality, unless the state intervened. The state had to intervene. Importance of the American. Now here comes the American Eugenics Society to wipe out these people. And it goes back to the story of the tribe, and they're given justification to wipe them out. Genetic cleansing. Much how I just showed you your boy was doing over in Africa. Charles Davenport. Eugene Fisher. This is what Eugene Fisher was doing in Africa at the same time it was happening in Indianapolis in America. Same time period, by the way. Eventually, pedigree charts. Crazy. Eventually, pedigree charts were made to determine whether character flaws such as laziness could be deemed hereditary. All niggas are lazy. Between 1915 and 1922, Charles Estabrook, a noted eugenics researcher from the ERO, and the president of the ERO at the time we know was Charles Davenport, who also was associated with that. Lauder Stoddard was also associated with this. Lauder Stoddard had a huge view on racial annihilation of so-called feeble-minded people. Let's keep going. Such family history studied. Now, I move down here. There's never factors beyond passage of eugenics sterilization laws. In 1907, Indiana was the first state to pass a law regarding compulsive sterilization, known as the Indiana Plan. The law was banned to feeble-minded. This law was banned to feeble-mindedness, insane, clinical, alcoholics, and other undesirables. If you were considered to be undesirable, you were sterilized. Feeble-mindedness, sterilized. You was alcoholic, you were sterilized. Compulsive sterilization. Compulsive sterilization, also known as forced sterilization, is a government-mandated program to involuntarily sterilize a specific group of people. Sterilization removes the person's capacity to reproduce and is usually done through surgical procedures. They chose to just depopulate people based on pseudoscience. And unfortunately, the Ben Ishmael tribe, which was a mostly supposed African-American tribe, still in the North American Indianapolis at the time frame, were snuffed out under such things such as the sterilization law. I'm going to show one more thing, and then we're done for the day. Sterilization laws. Watch this. It's called the Ben Ishmael tribe, by the way. Let me see if I can pull up a map real quick. Here it is. There you go. There we go. Ben Ishmael tribe. If you thought it was a joke, you thought it was a joke, because it's not. Ben Ishmael tribe, and this is supposedly a map of the tribal route, and it's more to that. I won't get into it today. I won't get into it today. I'll save it for another day. But just make sure you know that they were affected by forced sterilization and eugenics laws in Indianapolis in the same time frame that they were over in Africa exterminating our people as well. A global extermination. This eugenics was. Eugenics was an evil situation. Let me put it over here. Hold on. Forced sterilization of Native Americans.
According to University of Rochester, in the 1970s, doctors in the United States sterilized an estimated 25 to 42% of Native American women of childbearing age, some as young as 15. Even the lower estimate, 1/4 of Native women, is a whopping statistic.
Sterilization. Global. Happened to everybody. Look. I don't think I gave y'all Francis Galton. Or did I? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Or did I? You talk about Francis Galton? Yes, I'm muted. I'm not muted. I got sound. Let me see. I got sound. Yeah, you guys can hear me now? I got sound. We good. My bad. Native Americans were also sterilized. The practices of eugenics stemmed from Francis Galton. I think I gave y'all Francis Galton. I want to say I did. Francis Galton. This kissing yeah, Francis. This is Francis Galton. Francis Galton. Directly responsible. And we're still talking about eugenics. Behavioral genetics, also referred to as behavioral genetics, is a field of scientific research that uses genetic method of investigating the nature or origin of individual difference between behavior, while named behavioral genetics connotes a focus on genetic influence the field broadly. This is Francis Galton. Native American women were not the only individuals to be subject to forced sterilization. Black and poor women were also affected by these practices of eugenics. The practice of eugenics stem from Francis Galton writings on the use of using genetics to improve the human race. Genetic annihilation. Genetic annihilation. Dr. Francis Cress Welton, genetic annihilation.
Without any further ado, I'm gonna bring up the sister. I'm gonna let her speak for herself. I told her that she reminds me of my mother. She actually looks just like my mother. And she said, well, I hear that a lot.
Myself to be a Marxist. I thought that economics was causing racism, that it was a means for economic exploitation. Well, you can have ideas as an undergrad, but when you are a physician and responsible for the care of patients, you really have to know what you're talking about. I remember going home when I was an undergrad. You know, my parents and my grandmother were sitting at the dining room table.
This is Frances Cress Welsing. If you guys are not familiar with her, Frances Cress Welsing rewrote what was called the ISIS paper. Great read, but she breaks down the fear of white folks dealing with genetic annihilation. I want to do her do justice. I want to do her some do justice, and because she appeared on talk shows and everything. Here we go. Phil Dunning. Here we go.
You're a psychiatrist, and you're author of a theory. Here's what she's saying. First of all, white people are dying out. Into the next century, everybody on Earth may be of color. And we're scared about it. Already we're a minority. Did you know that? I'll guess 25% of us are white, maybe less than that. And that's the reason we're racist. We're not only afraid of dying out, but we're also jealous because we have no color. You're laughing. How come we spend so much time in the sun trying to get brown? Can't make a baby of color.
This is an old
and
video.
That's the reason for racism.
This is what they say.
Lynching.
Listen.
And if how do you explain? Do you believe we're racist? No, we're not racist. Yes, we are racist. What is this, an accident that all the cities are becoming blacker and blacker while the outer reaches of major metropolitan whiter and whiter? That's an accident? Fuck. When you get on an elevator and you're the only white person on the elevator, how do you feel? What'd she say? What'd she say? Frightened, she said? Oh, she's scared of elevators. Okay, here we go. Frances Cress Welsing, MD. You are a Washington, D.C. based psychiatrist, and you're author of the Cress, your middle name, we should say, Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism. You call racism white supremacy. To be sure, a provocative and controversial theory on skin color and oppression. Well, I'm ready. So is this mostly but not exclusively white audience. Let them have it, doctor. Boy, oh boy, you need an escort to get out of your speeches?
No, now, let me just give you a little background. This paper was written approximately in 1969 and presented in 1970. It was written for a group of black psychiatrists who were looking at racism.
Yeah.
It was also written because as a psychiatrist and working in a hospital trying to treat black people and white people, but recognizing that the majority of the problems that black patients had in a psychiatric hospital, when you took a history, you would run smack into racism. So I knew I had to understand racism to help solve the mental health problems of black people. Okay. So out of my brain computer, putting in the question, why do we see this behavior? Why have we seen it for hundreds of years? So I thought about these two things, basically two facts, that even though the white population says that people of color are minorities, that it is the white population that is the minority on the planet.
That's the reality you're saying.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
That in spite of the fact that black people, non-white people have heard over and over again, you're genetically inferior because you are non-white. That in reality, white skin is a genetic recessive status, not as said by Frances Welsing. Meaning that if you and I were to have a baby,
the baby would have color, and you make the contribution, and I don't.
That white
So
plus
what?
colored. Well,
Right.
wait a minute.
Right. You see
It's
how
not
he's
Frances
trying to
Welsing that is
little what she
concerned
said.
about the disappearance
Listen
of
to
white.
her.
Ben Wattenberg just wrote a book, The Birth Dearth. There have been multiple articles in the newspaper talking about the decline of Western populations.
Yeah. Here's the Washington Post, just to name one. We are.
See, they were so concerned, and still are, of the mixing of races. I told you before, it was positive eugenics. Then negative eugenics took place after they realized the white population wasn't increasing at all. And not just all white people, because they had a problem between, if you was considered to be a dirty white person, which is not of pure stock, they call it, of mainly the top three, the Aryan race, the Alpine, or the Nordic race. If you were not considered to be of that stock, you were not white.
A depopulation bomb, the weathering of the Western world. Here, incidentally, this was the percentage of the West's population in 1900, the turn of this century, about 30%. This is where we'll be less than 10% in the year 2075. Here's where we are about today, 15. So we're not having babies.
So whites are not having babies, and there is the concern about white genetic annihilation. In other words, I look at, this is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday holiday, and people will say, well, here's a man who talked about love. Yeah. Why was he killed? And I say that the deeper logic is, what if all black and white people and non-white people and white people love? What would happen to white people? White would disappear. You see, just mix all of the people on the planet up together.
In other words, if race didn't matter, or if color didn't matter, it follows with the jet planes.
No, I'm not saying if it didn't matter. I'm saying that indeed, if there was a mingling of all of the people, because
that's what I'm saying.
ability, okay, fine.
Absence of prejudice.
The ability, no, wait, don't confuse what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we mixed all of the people presently on the planet, stirred them up,
the white freckle-faced people would be gone.
Genetic recessive status would disappear. And that if I did a survey and everybody didn't have to, face anybody, if I said, how many people who are white want their children to be white, want their grandchildren to be white, want their great-grandchildren to be white, want their great-great-grandchildren to be white. And I've gone all over the country in England and asked this question. Yeah. Everybody wants the children and the generations to remain white. Yeah. If you do, then you have to do something to make sure that that happens. And I say that what the thing is that is done, and particularly in relationship to black non-whites, because we have the greatest genetic potential to cause white genetic annihilation.
Because you're the blackest.
Because we, right.
The most color.
Right. We have this ability to produce melanin pigment. We have more of it than anybody else. And so the most pressure is on black people. As a matter of fact, the black people learn, all non-white people over the world learn. If you're black, stay back. If you're yellow, you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, mellow, white, right. I can go to England and the people can just say the same thing. Doesn't matter whether, if you go to the Philippines, because there has been a confrontation of brown with white. Everybody knows the more pigment you have, the more pressure that is on you.
Yeah.
But they didn't understand why. I say the why is for the purpose of white genetic survival.
All right. And you're saying that blacks have no similar hidden subconscious anxiety about their blackness being undermined by the presence of white?
We don't have that fear. And I think that this is something that is not understood. You see, in other words, if I don't worry about, as a matter of fact, under white supremacy, the non-white people try to get lighter. You see, because the less pigment you have, the less threat you are to white, and so the greater opportunity that you have.
Yeah. The mass inability of whites to live and attend school in the presence of non-whites, manifested by the patterns of black and white housing and education throughout this country, and indeed throughout the world, is seen, according to your thesis, in terms of the color confrontation thesis, as the apparent total psychological discomfort experienced by whites in situations in which they must daily face their color inadequacy when they confront their neighbors of color. You go on.
I predicted. Look, I wrote that in 1970. I said you cannot have integrated housing. You cannot have integrated schools.
You still believe that?
Well, I mean, the evidence. I always look at the evidence. If Mr. Black and Mr. White live next door to each other, they have the same job, the same income, the same car, the same furniture. Yeah. They both walk out of the house in the morning. Good morning, Mr. Black. Good morning, Mr. White. Yeah. But Mr. White is still looking, but you've got something that I don't have.
You're saying he's saying that subconsciously.
Saying, right.
Oh, wait a minute. All right, well,
now, hold on now. The audience went crazy. The white audience went crazy. Here's what she's saying. It's called Mendel's law. To summarize, Mendel's first law, also known as the law of segregation. The law of segregation states that the alleges of given locus segregated into separate germites, that's not it. That's not it. Law of segregation is this though. That's not it. Hold on. Mendel's law. Hold on. Dark and traits. That's not what I want. That's not what I want. But basically, Mendel's law says that you can get light from recessive, but you can't get recessive from light. Furthering the point of what Francis Chris Welsing was dropping the science on, that if a black man sleeps with a white woman, the baby comes out, it's going to be black automatically. So it's a process of genetic annihilation. And she has several lectures and speeches dealing with this situation that white people are most afraid of, being annihilated genetically. So that's why moving into all white neighborhoods were important to keep their race and their stop race mixing. That's why segregation was such a huge problem, because they knew that as soon as they integrated, they would lose the chance of their population decreasing. So they had to do things like Racial Integrity Act real quick. They had to implement the court case between Lovings versus Virginia, I think it was. But the race mixing law, let's put it real quick. Well, first, let's go here. Let's go here. 1924, the Virginia Assembly enacted what's called the Racial Integrity Act. An act reinforced racial segregation by prohibiting interracials and classification of white person who had no trace whatsoever of any blood other than Caucasian. This is what she was saying on Donahue. White people are afraid of race mixing. They knew that they would be genetically annihilated if that happens, genetically wiped out if that happens. Exactly what that was. Hold on, wait a second. There we go. I'll read it for you. It's kind of smart for you. It says, in the beginning of the 20th century, the eugenics movement was gaining momentum. Eugenics was practice of controlling reproduction and altering genetic characteristics of the population. Some advocates of eugenics believe that the methods like selective breeding and sterilization would be beneficial to human society by promoting beneficial traits. But who decided which traits were desirable, which were undesirable? Historically, eugenics has been used to justify white supremacy, resulting in discrimination policies, heinous practices like forced sterilization. One such policy was Racial Integrity Act, which was passed in Virginia in 1924. The new law prohibited interracial marriages and unhearsed and long periods of discrimination, racial designation administered by the government. Not one time to say anything about skin color. They were about genetics. Ultimately, it is skin color, but it wasn't. When y'all say they're racist, the white people are racist. This is the science behind it. It's called racial science. This is the science behind their intent to keep you separate from them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not really seated in hatred. It's seated in science. One such policy, the Racial Integrity Act 24, passed in Virginia. It wasn't until 1967 the Racial Integrity Act was overturned in the United States by Supreme Court, Loving versus Virginia. Here we go. So the Supreme Court case overturned it when a interracial couple fought for their love, basically. Nevertheless, Virginia is for lovers now. Nevertheless, Plecker legacy, Albert Plecker of the Racial Integrity Act, also known as the one-drop law, legacy of racial discrimination still impact the communities today. In particular, the tribal community. Many find it difficult to document ancestral lineage. The paper genocide, right here says, the paper genocide identified non-white individuals as color. Give me 1 second, y'all. This is important. Hold on.
Thank you.
All right. My bad, y'all. I take that. Mine was calling. It said paper genocide to identify all non-white individuals as color, regardless of their identity, regardless of their Indian, regardless if from Africa, regardless, they're all gonna be colored folks now. This was in what was this 19? I think Plecker Racial Integrity Act was 1924. So you see why in 1924 Noble Drew Ali is talking about nationality, because of this was happening, the Charles Davenports were happening, the Francis Galtings of the world, the Eugenics Society was happening. Hitler was sitting in jail reading these documents by this dude over here killing these Africans. Like, it's all happening simultaneously in America, the ideology of exterminating a race of people off their natural planet. They all were doing it. All were doing it. So anyway, I'm gonna take my piece, man. Appreciate y'all for riding with me for the whole entirety of this segment. Appreciate y'all. The Cash App is right down the bottom there. Drop some coins in the Cash App on your way out the door. Appreciate y'all. If y'all been blessed by everything that's been said today. Hope y'all took notes. I enjoyed it. Peace and light, peace and love, peace to the planet. Make sure y'all share this, man. Share this. Share this. Right. Cherie L, we got a link. I think you got to shoot me an email because I got to get you in here as an official administrator. I think we talked already, but hit me up. Appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? Okay, cool. Peace and light. Hey, you got to hit me up, man. Listen, I don't know why. I was screaming this to the groups on Facebook. I don't know why I got disconnected to the Facebook groups, but I'll repost this to those groups on Facebook. What the case is, but I need you on with me. Like, I need to get more people on this live, man. Share it, man. Share it. Have a brother out. Oh, scratch over here. Peace and light. Appreciate y'all, man. Absolutely. Peace and light. Thank you. Till next time, man. Study. I can't preach it enough, man. Study. See y'all Sunday. It's on like Donkey Kong. Get your pen and your pad, get ready. All right, man, I'm out.